Setting up the AI for these states, you just want to say that AI is. Now, when you're setting up what the AI is going to be, you can say that it's going to be yes is AI, meaning that the system itself is going to be driving a player if triggered and or if it's set with the brushes. Um, if you have that you want it to be AI, but you also want to have it AI on trigger enter and disable it on exit, then you can just say trigger enter exit. So similar to what we were saying before, you can have a player walk into this, turn on the AI, and then when they leave or they get to the endpoint on path, these two as well, then you can have it return the control to the player. All right. And then the velocity controls animation direction, really important if you have 8 directional, whether it's top down like RPG style or even aside. Uh, this is going to say whatever direction the movement is happening, that's going to be the animation direction for the AI. It's not always what you want, but it's one that's going to be typically one that's used. If you're doing a complete top-down game, you may want to lock direction and you only want to rotate, which means you don't want to have the animation being played as well when the player is rotating around. Alright, so we'll say it's going to be is AI for this one. So the rest of the options here, we'll walk through them just to give you an idea. I'm just going to be brief though with it. So idle animation random, this means that you can actually do a random direction. So if there's 8 directions, if your player has 8 animations, it'll just randomly pick an animation while it's standing there. And then it's how much time, min-max time, you can have them the same or different. I'll say this is going to be about 3 to 5 seconds. The player will choose a different direction to be standing. All right, and the AI idle random on near box. This means that the near box, there's I believe 7 different states. The near box, you have an idle box, a near box, a follow, look at, steer, search, help, and then 2 actions. These are all going to be different states the player can get into. The reason it's got this one is just saying that if you get too close to the player, if the AI starts to walk up to you and it gets to its near box, it'll actually go into an idle so it looks more natural. Alright. The AI range means trigger box. So each state right here has a trigger box inside it. The trigger box will just, these are all going to be the same, but let's go ahead and kind of go through them here. If you were to say the trigger for this is going to be near, and you wanted to enable the near box, you can do a couple of things. You could say show it in game mode, edit mode, both. You can show it in game mode even if you're just testing so that you can see what's going on with it. Movement offset options for vertical, horizontal rotation. Rotate follow, that means that if you're, say this was the character, so when a character is assigned to the AI, it's going to take all of these properties as what it becomes. So if you had a box that was like all the way down there, when it rotates, that whole box is going to rotate with it going around, if you have rotate with me on there. That way, if you want to have a line of sight, you want the player to only look forward, but you don't want the player to see behind them, then you can set it up that way. So scale right now is just saying it's 10 by 10, meaning it's just right around the player. If you wanted something larger, as for instance, this might be something better to have like a, instead of a 5 by 5, you might actually just want a 10 by 10 block for the near. You have the option on the trigger side is when is it initially turned on? Trigger based, so I'm saying that I want it when you start playing, it's just constantly on. The box itself is doing a near check. You have one that is trigger time based. You could say down here you'll see the timers. There's going to be a timer for on and off. You can say you want time based, and then down here say you want it on for 2 seconds and then you want it off for 2 seconds. So the box checking would be just turning on and off, meaning that you may want to have it where the player walks to a point, stops, it turns on or off, that type of thing. Now at the same time there is a on end. Now the on end means that when the player gets to the end of the player's search on the AI, whether it's the waypoint or the pathfinding, a player gets to the very end, you could say trigger it on. So I'm going to say yes, I want this one, and the event on is just going to be how long do you want it on when the player gets to the end. All right. On each node is every time the player goes to a different point. So if you haven't seen the AI part in terms of the grids, be sure to look that part up. Everywhere there's a node, a path node where the player is going to be moving to, you can have an on each node, and you can say every time the player gets here, go ahead and say it's going to be triggered. It's going to be turned on at this point, and it's going to last for half a second, and then it's going to go back off. All right. And then the last one is event-based. Event-based is going to be a little bit more specific, because the event is saying that if the player gets hurt, if the player, which is going to be down here, you can say if the player has health enabled, look for it if there's a health condition. If it's less than 50 when the player gets hurt, then enable it. So for instance, you may have a player who's going to be peaceful, so they won't attack, but when their health gets down to say 30, then you enable their attack box, and their attack box all of a sudden says, oh, I need to actually start looking for you and attacking you. Alright, so those are going to be all the options for them. You have a point condition, point amount. You have the health condition, health amount. You have the, let's see, we've got the other ones here. Also, there's the enable on help trigger, meaning that if the help trigger goes out, you're actually sending a check, and then you can say, well, what are you checking for? There is a priority. The priority is saying which ones are first, second, third, which ones you are like required to be checked. Now, all of these, I'll go through these a little bit more in detail, but we'll do it inside of the Build-A-Game so that you can actually see when you click this, this happens here. And there should be video already up for it, so if you haven't seen them, be sure, because I'm looking through these, and it's a long list, and you want to know what it does before you start working with trying to set these up. This is only one, so I'm going to keep scrolling here so you can see it. This is only one set of options for, oops, for each one. So here is trigger near. You can do all the settings for changing to a different state, changing multiple states to turn on, changing states to turn off, all with just the one. When something happens, you can have all of the things happen for it. Along with that, you have the state of follow, you have the state of far, meaning the player has gone too far. What do? Do you go back to where you were? Do you stay in a new position? Do you just idle? You have the options for evade. Evade is going to be a whole other section down here of hiding, of looking for things. You've got search, you have help, and then the two actions of saying if you have a secondary primary weapon, do you use the one, do you use the second? Alright, so a lot of stuff right there, but these are all just the boxes. This is going to set up the brains behind the character so that the character knows when to check for stuff and when not to. And that's all going to be inside of AI range. Alright, so we'll stop there on this one, and then we'll just work our way through the AI states, and then take a look at some of the basic stuff that we find in those.